Hey ladies, got a struggle? Need to vent? It's time to join your voice and get down to business with some critical thought, where like-minded ladies share their personal experiences to empower each other, using critical thinking to make wise decisions. And now, here's your host, Lady C.
Hi, welcome to another episode of The Struggles of Jehovah's Witness Women. I'm Lady C, and in this episode, I'll be interviewing Helen. And Helen is going to help us to appreciate her experience as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, not only how she woke up, but how she learned to live her life after leaving. So Helen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So Helen, you want to tell us a little bit about your life experience and how you and your family came to become part of the Jehovah's Witness faith?
I was young. I was 13. My mother became a witness at that time by opening the door to them and inviting them in. And they convinced her that her belief in the Trinity was not correct. And so she thought, well, if that's not correct, what about everything else? And so anyway, she eventually became one of Jehovah's Witnesses. I was only 13, and I had other siblings at home with me, and she wasn't too dyed in the wool at that point, I could say, because she still let us do pretty much what we always did. I became a cheerleader when I was in junior high and then into high school, and that was not frowned upon. I also grew up in Helen, Michigan, and they have a tulip festival every year, and they have a Dutch dance that you learn and you perform during the festival. There's maybe 300 people doing this dance, and I happened to be fortunate enough to get into what they called an exhibition group, and so we got to travel to other cities to perform, and it was fun. It was great fun because I had all my classmates that I was friends with, and it wasn't a problem. But then I was 17 now and graduated from high school, and then I did have a boyfriend, and I think my mother was getting a little nervous about this, so she decided that she would like me to go with this family that was going to go to an assembly out in Rapid City, South Dakota. She said, this family needs help with their children, and it would be great. You'd meet some other witnesses. You could work in the refreshment stand and so on, So I took that opportunity because I really wanted to travel. So I'm at this assembly, and I'm in the refreshment stand. And I have never been one that takes life too serious. So this other gal and I, we were, of course, checking out the guys going through the line. And that's when I saw my husband, my future husband. Anyway, so we decided we were going to follow them. So we just tore our aprons off and went and followed them. And eventually ended up sitting with my husband. Not my husband then, but of course at the session, and it was fun. And so anyway, I did learn also because he left his billfold in the car that my host people were driving. He left it in the back seat, and I looked in it and it had a driver's permit, and I'm going, oh my goodness, because I found out he's 2 years younger than I am, but I really liked him, and I thought he was so mature and all that. So we ended up on the way home visiting his family, and then started writing letters, and that's that story. But it wasn't till much later that maybe another half a year before I got baptized. To be honest with you, it's so long ago, I do not remember the date, and but anyway, I think I was 18.
Okay, good. So when you met your husband, did you end up going back to Michigan?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so we went back to Michigan. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys just corresponded.
We corresponded.
Okay.
He finished high school, and then he got his call to go to Bethel. And while he was at Bethel, he invited me to come and visit him, and I stayed with a family in the congregation that he was in, and that was nice, you know. I enjoyed it, and then we just continued to write letters, and then we decided that we really would like to get married. And he was, of course, supposed to stay at Bethel for 4 years. Well, he decided he was going to leave after 2 years, and which he did. And we did get married. And actually, our honeymoon was traveling back to New York City, where we had an apartment that he managed 3 apartment buildings as a side job. So that's how our married life started. So anyway, it's, you know, it's a lot of detail in there, but I'm trying to condense this. So
When you guys got married, where did you start your life at? Did you start your life in New York, or did you start your life in Michigan, or
it was in Manhattan.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And he had already left Bethel at the time?
Correct.
Okay. And so then what happened after you guys got married?
Well, he was telling me, you know, I don't really believe this. I really never have. And he says, I'm sorry, but I just can't do this. And I said, well, you know, maybe it's because you have Bethel burnout. And so anyway, I dealt with it. And, you know, it was a little disappointing because, of course, I mean, I thought he was on the same page with me. But anyway, we managed. And
Okay.
I got pregnant, and we had our first baby in May of 1965. And we moved back to Michigan because I did not want to have the baby in New York City. So then 2 years later, we had a daughter, and everything was fine.
So when you and your husband first got married, it was like 2 years later that he decided no more being a Jehovah's Witness for him, but then you remained in the faith?
Yes. Actually, he told me early on that he didn't believe it. But I mean, we still knew many, many witnesses, but it wasn't at that time a disfellowshipping thing to not believe, you know. He just kind of faded. So everything continued, and we raised our children, and we talked about whether or not they would go to college, and we both decided that that was a good thing because they needed to be able to support themselves. So there were a lot of things that I looked at it, I think, in a good way. I wasn't so dyed in the wool that I couldn't see the other side of the story.
What was your life like, you know, with you being a Jehovah's Witness, going to the meetings, listening to them from the platform, talking about the end of the world being around the corner and all that kind of stuff, and then having a husband at home that just wasn't participating?
It was difficult, but not so difficult that I thought it was a deal breaker. You know, I guess it's like you just adapt, and he never stopped me from doing it. And he understood it because he was 4 years old when his mother became a convert. So, I mean, he totally understood about it. And he was busy in his work. He ended up in a company that he started at the bottom as a cost accountant and then worked his way up until later he actually became president of the company. And he had many Jehovah's Witnesses working for him. So, because he knew they were good workers and they were trustworthy. But then as time went on, of course, then it got so that they clamped down on that, and a lot of the ones working for him that were Jehovah's Witnesses quit because they, in good conscience, couldn't work for a company that was run by an unbeliever. But it was, you know, you just learn that there's certain things you look at, I think, with a more open mind because your husband doesn't see it like you do. And so we had respect for each other in that.
Did your husband talk about him not being a believer to those witnesses? Do they know that? I mean, did he openly discuss that?
No, it was business. They all knew he didn't believe it, but it was never discussed. You know, he just said, I don't want to talk about it if they,
Okay.
you know, so. He didn't.
Okay.
He didn't mix business with that, no. And as far as myself, we entertained many people that he had dealings with in business at our home. And I was never, I never even thought once about preaching to them because I just didn't feel it was appropriate. So
And you kept those two things separate, which, and
Yes.
that's really what people should do, you know.
Well, I think so.
Yeah. But did the brothers in the congregation, they just knew he was a baptized brother and no longer went to the meetings? And then as time went on, they realized that he wasn't coming back or whatever, and that's the reason why they quit the job?
Well, I think what happened is the rules got a little stricter as far as who you can and who you cannot associate with. And even though it was these people's livelihood, they in good conscience supposedly couldn't continue to work for the company. You know, what do you do? I kind of felt sorry for them because I thought, wow, you know, that's too bad they feel that way because my husband's not a bad person at all. You know, he's always been honest and upright. And so, but anyway, that's their problem, I guess. So
you can see the changes in the religion over the years.
Oh,
so
definitely.
When we're talking about the religion and the changes that they made, can you give us some differences about what you've seen from the 60s when you first came in to now?
Oh, definitely. First of all, when Dick and I were young, if we wanted to go out on a date, we didn't have to have a chaperone. They didn't have that policy in place at that time. It's kind of like, okay, you're young adults. You know right from wrong, and you're going to do what's right. That was one thing. Another thing, that they have become so strict as far as their dress, as far as like if you want to keep up with the latest styles, even if they're modest. One of the people I know, when they first started wearing maxi skirts, long skirts, she made herself and her daughter a really nice skirts, and they wore it to the Kingdom Hall. Well, they got chastised for that. And even though it was very modest, the skirt came all the way down to the ankles. But it was like, why are they doing this, you know? But I got out of it before that. So I stayed in it for 22 years after we were married. So in 1986, I did leave the religion, and it was a lot of little things that built up to my leaving. But this one time I went to the meeting, and this brother is up there, and he's saying, "Brothers and sisters, I want you to look to your left and look to your right, and you should be able to give your life for that person." And I thought to myself, oh boy, you wouldn't give your life for me in 100 years. And it just made me so mad to think that he would make a statement like that when I knew him very well, because I knew him from, I bet I knew him for, well, almost the whole time I was a witness. Anyway, so it was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. I walked out after the meeting. I didn't stay for the Watchtower study. I went home, told my husband, I said, he says, "Why are you home so early?" And I said, "I'm never going back." And he says, "What?" And he had the ball game on. He turned the ball game off, and he says, "What happened?" And I told him, I said, I'm done. And so I never was disfellowshipped. I just faded. I never went to another meeting. And honestly, I never had any guilt over it, because I think by that time I had thought a lot of things through and could see that it wasn't for me, because no matter what I did, it was never enough. So I could see that I was not going to live like that anymore. I'm happy now.
Yeah, and then can you just give us, did you have any doctrinal things that you didn't care for?
Well, I never have been totally convinced that the blood policy was right. And I know that if one of my children was going to die because of not taking blood, I would allow it. That was one big one. Another one, I never could really believe that all these people on the earth at Armageddon would be killed, because I knew other people. I mean, my neighbors. They're good people. They're good people. So they don't believe what Jehovah's Witnesses believe. So that means that God would destroy them. No, I just that didn't make sense to me. So I think I had some pretty open-minded thinking. I wasn't a total believer.
And how about your family? Did you have family that are witnesses?
Well, yes. I have an older brother that's a witness. I have a twin brother that's a witness. And I have a younger sister who married Dick's, my husband's, younger brother. So yes, those people all shun me now. And that was hard. That was hard. I would see my twin brother. I saw him because it was a family affair. I guess he felt he could talk to me, and he did. And I thought, oh, good, maybe we'll be able to continue to do this. But of course, once the funeral was over, then that was over too. So, but you know what? I look at it this way. I've made many, many people as friends in my life, my sisters and brothers. So, and I have more in common with them than I would ever have with my natural brothers and sister now. So.
Well, now let me ask you this. When you left the organization, I think you told me you had left in 1986, right?
Correct. Uh-huh.
So this is after Ray Franz had been disfellowshipped, right? So that meant that the disfellowshipping, they had clamped down more on it at that time. And so this is the reason why when you faded and you were not disfellowshipped, your family still treated you as you were?
I mean, I think there was a little communication because my mother passed away in there. But no, they didn't pursue me. They didn't care about me. And, I got through that. It's like you just have to learn that it's not you. It's the religion that's causing them to think like this. And so what are you going to do? You really can't do anything about it. So you might as well get over it. And so that's what I did.
How long did it take you to get over all of that shunning?
Probably about 3-4 years to be totally over it. I consider that if I now could have a chance to talk to my brothers or my sister, I think I would find that I don't have anything in common with them. So life is too short to be bothered with it. If they wanted to come into my life, I would definitely open my arms and say yes, even though I don't have anything in common. But I would think that if they wanted to come into my life, that they would have woken up and said, okay, we see why you left. I don't think they think of me as a bad person because I left. I'm happy with who I am, so I guess that's what counts, right?
Right. Now, did you work a job during the time that you were a Jehovah's Witness?
Yes, I got a job. Let's see, my kids were 10 and 12, and I decided I would like to go and find a job, part-time job. And one of my friends tipped me off to a job for the Secretary of State because she was offered this job, and she said, I don't want it, but she says, I told them I know of somebody who would be really good and you should interview her. So I did get called in for an interview, and I had to take a test in Lansing to get the job. But anyway, so I worked for the Secretary of State, giving out license plates and driver's license and all that for 18 years.
Okay, good. So you did have a career. So at what point did you end up leaving that job? Did you leave it before you left the witnesses or after?
No. I left in 1994, and it was because I really didn't need to work anymore, and we wanted to travel. So I said, well, I've had enough. So I gave my notice and stopped working for them. But I always enjoyed it, and I enjoy people. So I was very fortunate to have that job, I think, because it's definitely proved to be beneficial even to this day, because the state of Michigan had such good benefits. So even part-time.
See there, even people that's at the Kingdom Hall now, they're not working jobs, so they don't have those benefits. And not only that, but because you ended up leaving the organization, you were able to have association with people at your job too, correct?
Correct, yes.
And that was probably helpful to you in leaving and meeting other people and knowing people outside of that religion.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so that's why I always try to, whenever I'm interviewing people, I like to bring those points out, because a lot of times people, they end up with, if they follow the true Jehovah's Witness prescription for women not to work but to pioneer, then they don't have the opportunity to have work or have people that they can reach out to that are not witnesses, because that's that's how they really get people in the isolation, because you don't know anybody.
Right.
So you were able to overcome all of that because you were outside working. Your husband was already gone too, so that was also a help.
Right. Exactly.
But you never tried to get your husband back. You just let that go.
Well, he's a strong guy as far as his opinions, and I mean, I would say things to him once in a while, and else, like I can remember we were on a walk one time, and I says, "Well, you do know it's the time of the end," and he just goes, "Oh yeah, right." He goes, "Yeah, that's right, Helen. It's the time of the end." He says, 10 years from now, it will still be the time of the end. 20 years from now, it will still be the time of the end. And so that's how he would handle that. So I said, I still believe it. And he says, well, you have that prerogative. Why not? He says, but I don't. So, but it's funny because even when I left the witnesses, I guess I just never thought that. I thought if Armageddon comes and I don't make it, well, at least I'm living my life now. So I never was afraid about it. I guess they didn't put enough fear into me.
It's amazing. I mean, I just think it's interesting because like you and your husband are on two different, paths, yet you are still getting along. You're still together. And obviously you had a good relationship, or, you would have probably let this religion tear your marriage apart a long time ago.
Yeah, that's true. 54 years. So.
And that's impressive. And for you to wait, and your husband never tried to wake you up?
Well, he just said, does that make sense to you? He would, and I'm sure he had some influence on me as far as seeing some things in a different light. But, he was never one that tried to preach to me on the other side of it, So I'm just glad I woke up.
Yeah. And the brothers never came over to do shepherding calls, to try to get him back, to try to meet with him in a judicial case to get him disfellowshipped? None of that?
Well, actually, my husband sent a letter. He said he wanted to be disfellowshipped because he didn't want to be any part of this religion. So yeah, along that time frame, yes, he did do that, but
Oh, now you know what, that makes a lot more sense now. So
okay.
if he wants to get disassociated or whatever, because at that, I guess it would be called disassociation, when he did that. But that's when the brothers probably no longer could work for him. Because here they are working for a person.
That might be possible, yeah, but that's possible, yes. But also, I think they never ever, one person came to my house, one of the sisters came to my house. She says, I haven't seen you at the Kingdom Hall lately. And I says, yeah, I know. And she says, well, have you been sick? And I said, no. And she says, well, is there anything I can do to help you? And I said, no. And she said, I said, I'm fine. I'm fine. And I thank you for thinking about me and wondering. But I said, really, I think you don't have to worry about it. It's my business. So that's how I handled it.
And I think depending on where you live at, the type of elders that you have, and all of that kind of stuff determines whether they really come out like in a witch hunt. Because in certain areas, I've seen brothers do different things when it comes to, you know, how people leave the religion, you know?
Right.
But now if you're talking to somebody and they ask you, you know, how they can leave this organization and get on with their lives, what kind of advice would you give them?
I would say be smart about it. Try to fade so that you aren't making a big splash and just, you know. And then I would say start reading, learn new things, go to school, better yourself, get a job that you like. All those things are healthy things that people do every day. And it will help you immensely if you have some kind of support, but you have to start planning it. You know, it just doesn't come easy. There's so many great books out there right now for people that want to leave. Bonnie Zeman has, I know, 3 or 4 books out, and they're excellent. She's an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and she went back to school and is now a psychologist. And she's written all these books and for people that want to come out, and they're great. So I mean, there's so many things on social media also that you can go to find sites that I wouldn't find sites of ExJWs that are bitter or backmouth things. I would find sites that help people that want to really find how to help themselves.
When you and I talked a few weeks ago, and you talked about how when you left, you just left. And it wasn't like like you said, you weren't in there, you know, on those sites and stuff, and continuing to read about Jehovah's Witnesses, what they're teaching today, you know, what type of things are going on at the Kingdom Hall. You know, you decided that you didn't want to continue to live your life in that spotlight or in that shadow, you know. So how did you walk away from all of it? What kind of things did you do in your life? I guess I should say, what kind of things did you do?
Okay, for one thing I did was, I've always admired watercolor paintings, and so I started taking watercolor classes and fell in love with it. And to this day, I still paint. In the last 15 years, I've been part of a store that is a nonprofit. They sell gifts, they sell cards, they sell all the threads for needlepoint, and all our profits go to children's and women's organizations in Tucson. And so I devote maybe 20 hours a week to that. And I'm also part of the Southern Arizona Watercolor Guild. And so that keeps me busy. We have a gallery where we show our paintings, and so I'm a busy girl. But you just have to find these things that you love. Sometimes people start taking classes in writing and maybe write their story, which is very therapeutic. So that's an idea. So anyway, does that help you?
Yeah, it does, because we're trying to help people to see that there is life after Watchtower.
Right.
And I think that a lot of people, after they leave, they just continue to indulge in the religion.
Yeah.
And I mean, when we first left 20 years ago, I had nothing to do with the religion. And where JT was on the bulletin boards, and he was on there, you know, typing all this stuff and everything, and he would tell me about it, and I would talk about some of the things that, you know, he would tell me. But I was having my own life at the time. I enjoyed my life outside of this religion.
Right.
And because I was self-employed, I was mingling with other people that were like-minded, and we were networking for, you know, different business opportunities and stuff like that. So, and I was going back to college and just doing me. And and I was actually able to you know, begin to heal myself. So then, of course, when I came back to do Critical Thinkers, it was like, that's why I wasn't bitter, because I had done everything to get all this stuff out of my system.
Right, right. And you don't realize how much baggage you have and how toxic you are. And I also would highly recommend finding a good therapist that understands what you have gone through. I do think that what this freedom does for people sometimes is make them go off the deep end, because they go, oh, I can do this and I can do that. But when you're really smart about it, why would you want to do that? You never did it before. And is it healthy for you? Is it good for you? You know, you got to think the long term. And, but also I think you find that being in the world is pretty wonderful. There's so many good people out there that you can rub shoulders with. And they're not toxic. They're normal. They're normal. They don't have somebody telling them what to think and what to do every minute of their day. And if you can be around healthy people, you're going to become healthy. So that's the name of the game.
Well, you know, I like what you said, and I get a lot of people that, you know, email me, and they're in the process of leaving, and a lot of times people would like to find another ex-Jehovah's Witness to meet that person. Do you think that's really necessary to start to heal?
You're saying that they want to meet with another Jehovah's Witness?
Another ex-witness.
Well, you know, it depends on the ex-witness. There's a lot of ex-witnesses that come out and they never ever heal. They never get over it. They never become free, really free. Because their mind is still dwelling on the things of the past. So if the ex-witness that you go to has been out for a while and has found new things in their life that are healthy, I would say that's the person to pick. And that's why I recommend this Bonnie Zeman's books, because she is an ex-witness. She knows what these people are dealing with. And she even has a workbook that you can work your way through these things so that you can see how to heal yourself. So I just wish them the best, because I know how they feel they're in chains and they want to get away. They want to get out. So hopefully they make good choices.
Absolutely. That's really good. That's really good advice. And I think the best advice is like really trying to move on after you leave.
Correct.
And the more you keep trying to connect with people from your past that was an ex-witness, that is now an ex-witness, you know, it's like you can't get away from it, because like you said, if that person hasn't healed, then you end up getting swallowed up in all the stuff that they went through in the religion, and you're never able to talk to someone that can help you heal.
Right. And that's why I suggest somebody in counseling, somebody that maybe could help them get through the rough spots and move on. You know, I think what happens is all of us are comfortable when we're around what's familiar to us. And so you gravitate towards somebody who understands your past, but maybe that person necessarily isn't going to be helpful to you. So you have to be careful on who you allow in your life and in order to heal. And I just think that education is very important. Take some classes, educate yourself, expand your mind so that it's not constantly on this past business that you lived with for so long.
Excellent advice. I think that's great advice. The part about the familiarity that you said.
Yeah.
And people feel like they understand me, they know me, they, you know, and then you just become around people that you never grow, because everybody's continuing to talk about the same things that ailed them. So yeah.
Right. I think you have to take the chance to recognize that life is very short. Time flies very fast, and you have to heal yourself, and nobody can do that for you. So you if you need help, get professional help or go to somebody. I mean, if you're going to school, say you decide, oh, I'll take some classes, they must have somebody at the school that could possibly help you, that's educated in those, you know, the things that can help for mental good health.
That's true. And I've been talking to people about that, going to get an education. And the one thing I'd like to say to a lot of people that don't realize it is the first thing they think is they can't afford it. Well, a lot of people don't realize that they can get financial aid that can help them with their schooling. So I always tell people, never say never, and always go and look and see what kind of help you can get from the state, because there is assistance out there to help you to get your education.
That's true. It's good advice.
Mm-hmm. So you have any closing comments that you'd like to make to our listening audience, and how they can further, you know, either research to find out what they're in, to learn about this religion, or anything about, you know, when they leave, how they can keep on making strides in their life?
Well, one thing I think, you've been in a cult. You've been in a religion that's held you down. That's familiar to you. You know how it feels. So, but what you don't want to do is go into another cult. You don't want to say, oh, well, these people are so nice and they understand me, and be very, very careful that you don't make the same mistake twice. And there's many, many resources out there to be able to find out exactly what a cult is all about. And if the place that you find comfortable has certain things going on, and there's, I think, 10 or 12 things that all cults have in common, and it would be good to look that up, because it would help you to make good choices.
That is so true, because then you've already wasted your time with the Jehovah's Witnesses, and then you go back in somewhere else, and now, because you didn't educate yourself about where you've been, then you don't know where you're going. So that's very good advice, very timely advice.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, thanks, Helen, for being on the program. We really appreciate your time and your wisdom. This has been Lady C. Thank you so much for being in our audience.
If you've been in the struggle and want to appear as a guest on our show, email us at info@criticalthinker101.com. The views and opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Critical Thinkers.